All right, welcome to the second edition of 2021 previews. We're going to be doing this one a little differently today, obviously, as Scott is not able to join me live. But coming off the Cubs preview, the A's felt like a good place to go next, right? Stay away from back-to-back National League teams. Take a look at a team that had different expectations coming into 2020. And a lot of different factors that are going to play into their 2021 position. So here is the situation. The Oakland A's had a leadership change early July, right? I can't pin down the exact date, but it was a couple weeks prior to the actual trade deadline where long-term manager, GM Jason Gadim, stepped down after what I would say was a much poorer start to the season than he was anticipating, right? Going into the season, the A's, rightly or wrongly, were a team that had big expectation for themselves. I think if you talk to Jason at any point, he was really confident in how his team was set up. He loved the rotation with good reason, right? And thought that this was a team that could compete in the American League West. As difficult as that is, he still had the belief that this team was going to compete this year, right? Coming out of the gate, it just wasn't happening. The A's were in dead last basically throughout the entire season. There were a couple times when they were ahead of Houston, but the team struggled, and they struggled really, really hard. Gadim had put everything into it for a very long time, and eventually it just became too much and he had to walk away. So with Jason Gadim's departure, it opened up the door for lifelong A's fan Scott Gesford, previously of the Cincinnati Reds management team, to come over and take over his beloved A's, and allowed a couple of other moves as well. So Scott inherits this team in June of 2020, right before the trade deadline. Looking at his current team, and where he wants to go with it. Obviously, there's no hope for playoff contention at that point. You probably could have talked yourself into it if you felt like it, but I think Scott took the realistic approach that it wasn't going to happen. And being the guy that he was, immediately entered into trade talks, right? He was a member of this league for years, so he didn't necessarily have to sit back and wait. But he did still have a small deadline. So I wanted to walk real quickly through the trades that the A's made in 2020 that will affect their 2021 preview, right? So if you look back, starting on 7/22, they shipped Joe Mauer, fully retained, to the New York Yankees for a couple of prospects out in low A and rookie ball. The next day, they shipped Felix Hernandez, fully retained, to the Colorado Rockies for a handful of prospects and a couple of coaches, which has probably led to this discussion around coaching changes and coaching trades during the year, right? 7:30, day before the deadline, they deal Francisco Gonzalez, a double-A third baseman, good ball player. Nothing, huge to write home about, but a good ball player, to the Giants for Zach Greinke, in a move that I think really confused the hell out of a lot of people, being that they already had 5 good starters in that rotation. I guess they had 4 because they just dealt with Felix Hernandez. But again, it was the same situation. Like, they just traded for Felix Hernandez last season, an older pitcher, still pitching well, at a high salary, and then they shipped him off fully retained, signaling to me at least that they wanted to maybe give some of these younger guys a shot, like Ed Petty or a couple of the other ones that they've got down in the bullpen or down in the farm. And they come and they bring in Zach Greinke. Now, Zach Greinke is a different stratosphere right now than Felix Hernandez. The guy's still pitching at a top level, but it's still an older, expensive pitcher. The next day, trade deadline day, they bring in Juan Francisco. Now, luckily, he is fully retained by the Marlins, which helps. But they did have to give up Ed Petty and John Hurley in exchange to bring in Francisco. Francisco's a hell of a bat, which the A's desperately needed. And then the same day that they bring in Juan Francisco, they deal Taylor Sparks. Now, they deal Taylor Sparks and Tracy Moss over to Atlanta. They get James Tate, who is a great live arm at the back of that rotation. They got Byron Buxton, who's a very good defensive center fielder, which is something they need in Oakland to cover a lot of ground out there. And James Serrano, who for a while was starting in AAA, which I thought was an interesting move, with the guy who really only has 2 pitches fully fleshed out, with the third one on the way. But James Serrano should be a great piece of that bullpen, right? So what you see here is you see an old arm go out, an old arm come in. You see an old bat go out, and Joe Mauer and an old bat in Juan Francisco, not as old and still whatever coming in. And then you see Taylor Sparks go out, which was the interesting piece to me. He's been the bat in the middle of that lineup for a long time, so they kind of lose your protection for Francisco. We talked enough about like the moves that were made at the deadline with Scott, but I just wanted to put this together so you have an idea of where he is in 2020. The A's had real expectations that they were going to compete this year, and it didn't happen, right? So when you take a look at 2021, new ownership group, new GM, right, to say the least. So where do they see themselves here in 2021? I asked Scott Gesford a couple of questions. Without him being here to discuss it, it will make it a little bit one-sided, but we'll walk through this thing piece by piece. 2021, how many wins did the A's expect to get in 2021? The answer I was given by Scott Gesford is 88. 88 wins is the expectation that the A's have for themselves in 2021. If I go here, that will be the most wins for the Oakland A's since the league started in 2012 when they won 90 games. They have not won 88 games since then. They won 84 in 2013 when they won the division. The last time anyone outside of Anaheim or Seattle won the division was that year. And since then, it's been downhill. They've been in the mid-70s, high 60s ever since. So, it says they have one win. Thanks, Steps. That's plus. So, that's an interesting piece, right? Scott Gesford is predicting in 2021 that they're going to win the most games they've won since 2012. That seems like a stretch to me personally. I think it's mostly because I don't love the lineup. You can't hate the rotation. The 2021 rotation will be exactly what it is right now, which is Zach Greinke, Lucas Giolito, Walker Buehler. You can put any one of those three at the top that you want, and then Shelby Miller, James Tate at the back end are spectacular 4-5. So the rotation is going to be lights out. It's going to be kind of hit, right? And we'll get to that in a second. 88 wins. How or where in the West does that put you in Scott's mind? 88 wins. You have to figure that puts you behind the Angels and behind the Mariners, right? Who are both probably going to win 95 to 100 games again. Is that enough to put you above the Texas Rangers? That's my big question. I think that would be a concern for everybody, right? This division, as we all know, is stacked top to bottom. 88 wins in the American League West this year maybe gets you above the Rangers. They're sitting at 82 wins right now with a month to go, essentially. I would bet the Rangers get above 88 wins. So if you're saying 88 wins puts you in third place in the National American League West, that means you're counting on Texas to take a step back, and you're also thinking Houston does not make the leap forward that I think Matt Wells and the Houston Astros think they're going to make with a full year of all their youngsters under their belt, right? So that's the thing. 88 wins, third place in the American League West. I don't know. That's a challenge. I'd love to have Scott on here. I wish I could kind of have some back and forth about him to have that thing kind of talked about. He does think that puts him 12 games back, which means he's predicting 100 wins for, the Angels. He gave me a full division ranking. He gave me Angels at 162, Mariners at 97 and 65, A's at 88 and 74, Texas at 82 and 80. So he does predict a step back for them. And Houston 80 and 82 predicts a step forward for them, but not enough to actually take a spot in this big fight here. We talked about the 2021 rotation. Greinke, Giolito, Buehler, Miller, Tate. Spectacular, right? I think adding Greinke and Tate this year and then be able to re-sign Lucas Giolito pretty much solidify where they were going to go. Now, outside of any unexpected offseason moves, which you never know with Scott, this will be their 2021 rotation. The bullpen, it's always going to be up in the air. You have to expect James Serrano to be in that bullpen next year. So let's not talk about big changes there. Let's go to the lineup that we just specifically talked about, right? Their losses, for the most part, at least since Scott came on, I don't know. I didn't go back to what Jason had dealt earlier, but Taylor Sparks and Joe Mauer have been replaced by Juan Francisco. The 2021 lineup, at least the focus is here for Scott Gesford, second base and third base, as well as center field, right? I think Byron Buxton gets his fair shake out there, but when do we see Greg Faustini come up? He's getting an invite to spring. I think Paul Bailey is going to get an invite to spring. Jazz Chisholm, I've been told, is going to get an invite to spring, which is interesting. Dan Bryant gets an invite to spring. Alfredo Perez gets an invite to spring. And then a handful of arms to fill those bullpen roles. That's a lot of very good, young, not superstar prospects, right, for the A's, but some good names down there that can come up and make a difference if some of these other guys, Juan Francisco, who is that second baseman whose name is totally escaping me right now, but there's a couple of bats still left in Oakland that they can get some people on base around them. Maybe they can drive some runs in. I would have to bet if Greg Fassini does not make the Major League roster out of spring in 2021, he is being dangled to get a piece that can help them compete. Because if they're trying to finish in third place this year, they need somebody who can compete next year. Reinke isn't going to be around much longer. Francisco's only going to get worse. This is the team that needs to compete next year. So I would think Fassini or Bailey or Chisholm don't make the Major League roster. They are dangled as pieces in trades next year. Right? I can't talk too much about this because I don't have somebody to bounce these ideas off. So this will be a little bit shorter one. The last one was about 30 minutes. But let's talk about the the Oakland A's award winners. 2021 MVP, the prediction from Scott Gaspard is Lucas Edgar. Lucas Edgar is projected to be the MVP for them in 2021. Currently hitting .289 with 21 home runs in 136 games this year as a 24-year-old left fielder. I don't hate it. He's going to break 5 on the WAR. Maybe he's 4.5 right now for WAR. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't see who else wins this award, right? If you're looking at an MVP, Francisco maybe, but he'd have to have a hell of a year. Yeah, he seems like the only one that's a possibility here. Lucas Edgar, 2021 MVP. Cy Young, a bunch of candidates to win this year. Scott has Lucas Giolito projected to be their Cy Young winner. I buy it. And then the Rookie of the Year, Greg Faustini. So, quick recap. The A's in 2021, look for them to finish in third place and compete for a wild card spot for the first time in years. Look for the pitching rotation to be what carries them. Look for Scott to be active in the offseason to acquire a second baseman, a third baseman, potentially a center fielder should Faustini not work out. But as we all expect, from a team like Scott, expect him to be active in the offseason and come spring to try to make some additions. And got to help the Astros and the Rangers if they finish down there again. We may see a couple more rebuilds restarting. I think the Astros are basically set here, but that is it. 13 minutes without somebody to talk to. We went 30 with jabs. Appreciate it, guys. I'll put this up, and then we will move on to hopefully the Royals and the Astros later this week. Thanks.